When it comes to the Māori separatist movement in New Zealand, there are two key movements involved. There is Te Pāti Māori, who are the politicians in our parliament with 6 seats, and then there is Toitū Te Tiriti, who like to distance themselves from Te Pāti Māori, and they're the more activists of the separatist movement. They like to go out and activate people in the community to stand up and protest against the government and go on long walks and so forth. That is the two distinct groups. But are they really that distinct? Now, many of you will know this already, but some of you may not. Toitū Te Tiriti and Te Pāti Māori are about as close to peas in the pod as it possibly gets. If we look at the two key figures within Toitū Te Tiriti, you've got Kiri Tamihere Waititi, the daughter of Te Pāti Māori President John Tamihere, and then the wife of Te Pāti Māori co-leader Rawiri Waititi. She's literally in charge of the entire organisation. Then you've got Eru Kapakingi, who does far more of the public-facing duties in Toitū Te Tiriti, who is the son of Te Pāti Māori MP Maria Meno Kapakingi, who was recently just demoted within the party because, well, there's friction going on there, which we're going to get into, and it involved apparent money giving to Eru Kapakingi, among other things. Anyways, they're peas in the pod, they're the same thing, but I like to break them down into two distinct groups. You've got the political branch and you've got the activist branch. That is what it is. The political branch, it makes a mockery of our political system and is involved in our parliament purely for that purpose and to rile people up and put a spanner in the works whenever the government wants to do something useful. And then the activist branch does pretty much everything that Te Pāti Māori wants to do, which is drag in a bunch of Māori, particularly the alienated kind, to vote for them, to help get them power. That is the two branches and their purposes. But I don't think Eru Kapakingi and Toitū Te Tiriti were on the same page with that. And that's where I think there is some conflict here. If you haven't seen, in the news the last couple of weeks there's been a lot of conflict. It started with Eru Kapakingi coming out and saying that Te Pāti Māori's run a bit like a dictatorship, or they're very authoritarian in the way that they go about things with their decision making and so on. He wasn't a fan of that. They didn't necessarily agree with all of the ways that the party was going and all of the beliefs or things that the party was pushing and whatnot. It's complicated. I don't know the nitty-gritty details of what they were disagreeing on. Nonetheless, Eru Kapakingi, Toitū Te Tiriti, they weren't necessarily the biggest fans of how Te Pāti Māori was handling things that were a little bit more contentious within the movement. And so Te Pāti Māori bit back by, well, essentially sanctioning his mother, accusing them of doing all sorts of stuff with finances, and accusing Eru Kapakingi and questioning his character and saying that he was being aggressive and abusive and verbally abused, members of parliamentary staff and so on, the likes of which are quite serious, by the way. Nonetheless, I want to get the point across that they're fighting. One side says one thing about the other side bites back and tries to, discredit the other, whatever. It's rather petty, it's rather pathetic. The point being is there are two ways you can go about this. You can look at it as it's all political theatre, it's all designed to get attention, it's all going to blow over, there's nothing real to it. They are completely aligned in every single way. There's no real division there ideologically. There's no real division there in terms of their goals as a movement. That is the easy way. That is not the position I hold. I think that there is very real division between Te Pāti Māori and Toitū Te Tiriti, but it may not be for the reasons you think. The key thing that I heard Eru Kapakingi and Toitū Te Tiriti say about Te Pāti Māori was emphasise power and Te Pāti Māori's desire on power. I've said this a long time, Te Pāti Māori desire power. That much is clear. How they go about it is a bit, I don't know if they're ever going to achieve it, doing what they're doing, especially when they're using Toitū Te Tiriti as an activation of sorts, or as a means of drawing people in to vote for them. The way that Te Pāti Māori goes about doing things is very focused on power and utilising the political system to grandstand for political theatre, to get what they want, and to ultimately undermine our entire system for their own gain. They're not using the system, they're not using Parliament to benefit Māori. And whilst I don't believe that what Toitū Te Tiriti is doing will benefit Māori, I believe that their reasons are intended to benefit Māori. I believe people like Eru Kapakingi, whilst they are ideologically captured radicals, extremists, and will never do anything good for Māori, I believe the intentions there are ideological in nature rather than self-interested. Whilst I think that Eru Kapakingi probably has a bit of self-interest in there and is gaining from it immensely, I still think he is driven by ideology more so than someone like Rawiri Waititi, who is there for power. Someone like Debbie Ngāwere is there for power. Someone like Hannah Rāwhiri Maipi Clark is probably less so there for power and more there for thinking that she's making a difference because she's young, naive. These are the distinctions that I would make between the two. One is the political branch focused on power, one is the activist branch focused on revolution. Eru Kapakingi and all of the people that follow him because they actually buy into the narrative being sold. Te Pāti Māori have no interest in actually following through on those promises. Te Pāti Māori desire power, and that is it. They want to utilise Māori who they're able to draw in to vote for them so that they can get more seats, they can get more power. Not to benefit Māori, but to get that power. That doesn't matter to them if they've got 50% of the seats in Parliament. They don't care about the Māori people, they care about their own pockets, their own power, their own influence. Where I really think that tensions are growing with Toitū Te Tiriti is that Eru Kapakingi is waking up to the fact that he is just a pawn for the political branch. He's just a pawn for Te Pāti Māori. He is being used. He's being used as a puppet to control masses of Māori for these specific elites to gain power. Now, this all goes into his ideology, which I would say is far more consistent with Marxist ideology than Te Pāti Māori. He is far more of a neo-Marxist, cultural Marxist than someone like Rawiri Waititi, who is probably understood or acknowledged or dabbled with it, but doesn't really care about it beyond how he can utilise it for power. Someone like Eru is young enough and educated enough to have insights into these things where he would have been ideologically captured. I look at people like the Aotearoa Liberation League. They sit there and they spout off cultural Marxist nonsense on the daily. They are very much ideologically aligned, I would say, with the Green Party. They are very much ideologically aligned with Toitū Te Tiriti, and this is very clear. For Toitū Te Tiriti, the whole ideological underpinning of their movement is the oppressed versus the oppressor. And when Te Pāti Māori is behaving in a way which they associate with the colonisers, they associate with authoritarianism, they associate with everything that's bad about oppressors, and makes them even more oppressed, they will naturally push back against that, because that is a worldview inherent to their movement, and they're not going to compromise themselves there. You see, Te Pāti Māori is increasingly becoming just a Uncle Tom party. Not in the way that you might traditionally use the Uncle Tom slang, but in the way in which they are Māori LARPing as white people. They are Māori dressed up as white people, engaging in the white system, behaving in a way associated with the white people, and very much being oppressors, being dictatorial, being authoritarian, all of the things which movements such as Toitū Te Tiriti aim to push back against, be them real or imagined. Because that's what you need to remember here. Most of these oppressed groups in 2025 that the left focus on are imagined. Which brings us on to another question. Will this impact the votes for Te Pāti Māori next year at all? The answer is probably not. The answer is the only votes that matter to Te Pāti Māori are the Māori electorate seats. They're not going to have any trouble winning those, irrespective of the relationship between them and Toitū Te Tiriti. They're not going to have any problems at all, because Labour is far worse than Te Pāti Māori, even if there is a tense relationship there. Even if Te Pāti Māori are these dictatorial authoritarians who don't care about Māori, they will still be perceived as caring more about Māori than Labour. More about Māori than the Willie Jacksons of the world. So they're not going to have any trouble at the next election, and that's a shame, really. But there's a final acknowledgement that I want to make, that this may come as a shock, but that we should actually pick a side here. We should actually look at this conflict and think we actually want one side or the other to come out on top. Now, at first glance, you might think, oh, well, you want to get rid of Te Pāti Māori. Certainly. We just need to get rid of them. We need to get rid of them now. They're dangerous. They're, disrupting our parliament. They're a problem for 1,000,001 reasons. That much is true. But they are far less of a threat to New Zealand than Toitū Te Tiriti. Now, why is this? Well, one, because currently Toitū Te Tiriti is as civilized as they are because they're connected to a political party, despite the denial that they are. Imagine if the relationship between the two became so fractured that you're left with an activist branch of a political party who's no longer affiliated with that political party, suddenly being on their own, led by a radical neo-Marxist with ethno-nationalist ideas, who's all for the revolution. You're left with them in charge of an entire movement of hundreds of thousands, potentially, of people, with no political correctness to maneuver around. The chaos that someone like that could bring if they decided that they've had enough. If they've decided, yeah, I don't care about the rule of law anymore. They already kind of blur the lines of it. Yeah, I don't care about trying to keep it civilized for the sake of Te Pāti Māori anymore. Clearly it's not working the Parliament way. Clearly it's not working the proper way. Let's take a step towards revolution instead. Toitū Te Tiriti is far more of a present threat than Te Pāti Māori. Toitū Te Tiriti has far more potential to engage in violence than Te Pāti Māori. And so long as that remains the case, if there was one side of this that needed to disappear, needed to collapse as a result of this conflict, it is Toitū Te Tiriti. It is in everyone's best interest that the radical Marxists disappear, and that the problematic ethno-nationalists in our parliament, making a mockery of everything that we stand for, are laughed at and eventually lose their ability to enter our parliament.